Welcome to my channel, The Binge Eating Therapist. I'm Sarah, former binge eater turned psychotherapist, and my mission is to use this space to bring content to you to help you understand your struggle with food and break free from binge eating. Today's video, I've done something a bit different. I'm talking to one of my very best friends in the whole wide world, my friend Nicki, about the time I spent struggling with binge eating, because I was pretty open about it. I spoke to probably Nicki the most at that time about what I was going through, so I thought it would be quite interesting for us to get together and look back over that time. So she shares messages that I sent to her 13 years ago, which felt really weird for me, and I was actually a bit nervous while recording this because I do a lot of interviews and I love meeting people and finding out about people, but I was doing the interview, but yet it was about me, so it all felt a little bit strange. I don't know how valuable it will be. Normally I put a video out and I believe that it has a lot of value for people. I've been asking myself questions, is this a bit narcissistic, look at me, listen to my story, or is it actually going to be helpful? I cannot tell because I can't look at it with any objectivity. It might just be really boring, actually. And I appreciate in an intro I was supposed to be bigging up what I'm about to show you, but I don't know, so I'm just going to let you watch it and make up your own mind. And feel free to get in touch after you've seen it, comment below or send me a private message. But I hope it's useful in some way. I've sat on this for a little while, not sure whether to put it up or not, so I'm going to put it up and just see what the response is like. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah. Okay. Right.
Hi.
Hi. Okay. Okay. Just give me a second. I just need to ground myself. This is just so weird. I need to go one or two ways. I'll either get so self-conscious that I just won't know what to say, or I'll forget the camera's there and then I'll be like, shit, there's so much I need to edit out. So one way or another. But yeah. Anyway, okay. Well, hi, Nicki.
Hi.
Fancy seeing you here.
At our scheduled meeting.
So yeah, no, thank you for agreeing to do this. I just thought
Right.
it might be kind of fun for us to look back over my eating disorder and those years, because we talked a lot, as I remember it. During that time, I was quite open with you about what was going on, but we've never talked about it in recent years. We've never really looked back. So I thought this might be a fun idea to compare memories with what we remember. I think maybe I was thinking to kick it off, what I would want to ask you, and you might have questions for me, actually, things that you didn't, feel to ask at the time.
Yeah.
But my question would be, like, do you remember when you first, realized or grasped that there was a problem going on and it was quite big for me? I know I think I spoke to you about it, but I don't know if you remember what it was like when, in those early days, when you found out something pretty weird was going on with me and food.
One of my earliest memories is when you were getting upset. No, I take that back. You weren't getting upset as such. You were calling or message. You were, concerned about your relationship. And your main concern was because you'd put on weight. And you didn't think Ben was grasping why, and he just wasn't quite getting it. But I'd say that's my very, very earliest memory of any issues, as such. And I don't know why particularly that's stuck in my head with this particular image of a corridor in that accommodation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I remember a few conversations that we had over a period of months. I think it was a fair few months. We'd keep having almost the same conversation.
Yeah, because my weight changed pretty quickly anyway.
It did, yeah.
And that was, so I think certainly at the beginning, the focus for me was for a long time very weight focused, because my weight changed so rapidly. And I guess I don't know what you remember about seeing my weight change, like, for you.
I don't think. I don't know if this sounds cliche, but I didn't. Of course, I saw it, but I didn't see it. Does that
Yeah.
does that make sense? In that I just saw you, and of course I will have noticed it, but I didn't. It didn't
Yeah.
seem to really be much. I think partly maybe because I knew that you had your own worries and concerns about it. I didn't feel I need. I didn't really think much of it, shall we say, in the respect that I wasn't going to stand and, go, oh, Sarah, you're looking a bit chubby today, or anything like that, because I was well aware that you were well aware
Yeah.
that you put on weight. But I don't think I remember particularly being, oh, crikey, or anything along those lines, because you were still you.
But it's interesting you say that, because I think for the person gaining the weight, because it's so in your mind, that's exactly you imagine everyone's going to be thinking, though, that they're going to be seeing you and going, oh, crikey.
Yeah.
And I don't think it was my imagination that when I saw someone that I hadn't seen for a few months, I got the double take.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, I think, again, though, when you don't see someone for a long time, you notice things more. When you see someone frequently, as we did, it's such a, it was really gradual. So it wasn't like I suddenly saw you really skinny and then suddenly saw you like hugely obese. It wasn't like this massive change, because I saw you, I mean, I almost, I can't even remember how often daily, sometimes not much more than a week or so in between maybe seeing you back then. So it was a gradual change for me. But yeah, I completely, you see people all the time and they're like, oh, I've lost a stone, or I've put on a stone, and you're like, oh, really? Because you see them all the time. It's such a gradual change. Whereas if you haven't seen someone for 3, 4, 5 months, and you're like, oh, yeah, they do look different. So that's probably why for me, maybe it wasn't, because it was such a gradual thing. But yeah, no, I completely get what you mean about when you haven't seen someone for a while, and if your weight has changed in either direction, it is going to be more noticeable.
Yeah.
To that
And
person.
of course, in the job that we were doing at the time, those uniforms are not forgiving. There is not the tiniest bit of elastication.
Nope.
Those trousers. So to go up several clothes sizes in the space of a few months was, for me, like mortifying. Like I genuinely felt, it sounds so big, and I can almost feel it now just remembering, I genuinely felt like humiliated. Yeah, it was, and I just remember feeling sick all the time because my uniform was so tight.
Yeah.
And having to order new trousers often over those kind of few months. So also, like, my memory of those times, particularly like those early days when it all seemed to start so fast, my memory of it was that it was all I could talk about. And I don't know if that was your experience of me at all, or whether I was just all I could think about and I wasn't talking about it as much as I thought I was.
No, I don't remember that being the case. I think, but I'm probably saying this just because I know you so well, that I can imagine, yes, it was your constant thought. And so you probably thought you were talking about it when actually it was more your thoughts that were overtaking. I don't know. That's not something that I remember at all.
Yeah.
But obviously we did have conversations, some of which I have here on message.
Yeah. So you did let me know you'd gone back through WhatsApp, I think, back like a decade or so.
Messenger is the one I've got screenshots of, as far back as that goes.
Okay, this is going to be weird because we haven't talked about this before the video, so I genuinely have no idea what you're going to say or what.
One thing I found quite strange is you'll send me this long message and I don't reply. But I can only imagine that we did actually speak about it and I just didn't reply to the message, because I wouldn't have ever have just read that message and just ignored you. But there are a few where I just don't reply.
I reckon you probably called me, because that was back in the day when people made phone calls.
Yeah.
And we did used to just chat on the phone. So I reckon you would have called, because I've got no memories of like sending you messages and you just leaving me hanging. So I don't.
There's not many. I just noticed on a couple of occasions. I was like, oh. oh, she sent me this really long message and I just haven't replied. The first, and I don't know if this is scroll back as far as it goes, but the first message that I have saved, the oldest message I have saved on Messenger, was on the 30th of October 2007.
Ooh.
The first message is me to you saying, why were you feeling guilty? And lots of question marks. And your response to that was, because I had been binging all day, ... My response, oh, I see. Naughty, spank bottom. And your response to that was, don't, I like that. So I mean, obviously I don't remember that message exchange happening, but my response of, oh, I see, naughty, spank bottom, was, I think, clearly me not knowing exactly what to say, not understanding it at that time, and saying something that I thought would do. And I think, looking again in hindsight, looking back, your response of don't, I like that, was again you kind of just acknowledging me, acknowledging you with something, and that was it. Right.
So this was, because I always say, like, it started in October 2007. So this was just weeks after the binging had started. How little I knew then that this was going to be another decade.
I mean, that's all I've got from way back then. As I said, text messages just won't let me scroll back that far, and WhatsApp, well, I don't know what happened with that, whether I did or didn't do it, but I haven't had a chance to scroll all the way back on WhatsApp yet. But yeah, very, 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 very vague memories of around that time. I do remember. I remember you telling me about days about what you'd eaten. Mm-hmm. You tell me what you've eaten, and it was, like, I don't know,
a lot.
It was a lot. You'd say, I ate a whole bag of cookies, or and plus lots of other things. You'd list what you'd eaten that day, and you'd tell me how you again, we were saying earlier on, you were perfectly honest with me. You tell me what you'd eaten, how you felt, that you kind of knew that you were going to feel rubbish the next day, or that you knew that you kind of already knew the process in your mind. You'd almost tell me what you'd eaten, and you knew, well, I know I'm going to feel like this next day, and I know that what will happen is, and what I need to not do is this, and it would be like a process that you tell me about. I don't remember what I'd say back. I think again, this is not necessarily memories as such, just me trying to think about what I may have said, and what I think I kind of went along the lines of was that I listened, and I think I tried to understand, but also because like I said, with this process, you kind of were telling me, but I know that I'll feel like this, and I know that I'll feel like this tomorrow and the next day. So I just kind of trusted that. I was kind of like, okay, you're telling me how you feel, you're telling me how you're going to feel. Okay, that's fine. And I just would acknowledge and agree, and then maybe check in a few days and say, how are you feeling, and you'd say, oh yeah, no, brilliant today. Yeah, haven't binged for, I don't know, 3 days, 4 days a week, whatever. Or some days I remember you saying, oh, shit, I've been really bad this last week or this last month. But so that's going back as far as I'd say my earliest memories of how conversations went.
Yeah. And because you're a very pragmatic person, so if I need like a kick up the arse, or if I need somebody kind of to tell it to me straight, then you would be my go-to person. And I suppose it's interesting the way you sort of worded it. Like you say, I knew what the problem was, I knew what I was doing that wasn't helpful. Like, there wasn't any advice, there wasn't anything that anyone could say where I would go, oh gosh, yeah, I hadn't thought about that. And then it would fix everything, until I was chatting to Millie about, and I don't know if you'll remember this, but this was about 9 months into it. I was chatting to Millie about it on a night duty, And she said to me, why don't you try coming off the contraceptive pill? Because that can mess about with your appetite. Because I was searching for an answer. Like, I did not know what was going on. I thought, is this physiological? Is it psychological? I just don't know. And it would have been just before my 26th birthday. I stopped taking the pill, and all urges to binge left me for like 3 weeks. And I was so excited. It was that birthday we had at Cats when Imran came down and got kicked out of the club.
Yes.
And I was on cloud 9 because I was like, this problem is over. I've got my life back, and everything was wonderful until like a few weeks later, it was just like, bam, hit me out of the blue. Devastated me at the time because I thought I'd found my answer and found my way out. But...
yeah. I mean, I can't say I remember that, you know, I'm not going to lie. I don't remember that at all. But if you were around 26, then, you know, as we've discussed, there would have been a lot of alcohol involved. And yeah, that does affect my memory, definitely. Yeah, I mean, I know there was a lot of downs, a lot of lows. And I think I do remember trying to come up. I'd give you advice, and I'd always kind of give it as in, well, I've got no idea what I'm talking about, but because I think I did, you know, just anything you can think. And again, before you knew what really was going on, and it was trying to find an answer, I would often try to suggest things that might help. I think because I felt, well, I should. And I did obviously want to try and help. Not that I had any clue whatsoever, or insight. But I did, yeah, I know, and I still do, don't I? Sometimes when something's happening, I'm like, well, maybe.
I think you're so cautious now about how you give advice. It's like you're trying not to overwhelm me. So you're afraid, you know, you could do this. Whereas I think, you know, 10, 15 years ago, you were perhaps, less tactful. Maybe that's an age thing. I don't know. But the one time I really do remember, you know, one that's a very clear memory, and I think it would have been about May 2011. And I turned up at Hanover House in a mess on your doorstep. I'm assuming, I don't think I just turned up out of the blue. I think I was whisked around, and I turned up on your doorstep. You're looking horrified because it's not ringing any bells yet, is it?
Not yet.
I remember bursting into tears in your doorstep, and like coming through into your lounge and just being like, the bulimia at that point was absolutely out of control. I was binging and purging several times a day. And while I was there, you made me phone the GP. You stood over me while I phoned the GP and booked an appointment, and you got me to contact Ren to go and get my bloods done. And you just kind of just took charge, and that was exactly what I needed at that time.
See, I am the world's worst friend because there's nothing. There's no memory of that whatsoever. I'm terrible, and this is my concern about doing this call, was that this goes to show how bad my memory is.
You're not terrible because you stepped in like when I needed you, and that was when I went to see the psychologist, the eating disorder psychologist, which was very useful. And also, like, some of my blood work was out, and I had to have a few tweaks made, and I did, you know, even that point, because it was like one of those points where I just like broke apart, and you just kind of like scooped me up and were kind of like, okay, like, this is what we're going to do. And to just have somebody else kind of take charge, because I'd not long lost my mum at that point as well. So it was just really.
Yeah, I think I was particularly, not to say I wouldn't have done this a year before, but I think I do remember being very protective. I felt, you know, one of the.
What? Oh, you're getting emotional. I thought you were trying to like censor yourself, and then I realised, oh, she's emotional.
One of the last things, I'll try and get this out.
Don't, you'll set me off.
I made a promise to your mum to always look after you. And as you said, with that being so soon afterwards, I think I was quite in protective mode. So, you show up like that, I would have, I can imagine, I don't remember it, but I can imagine I would have, been the way I was, clearly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I suppose
although bear with me, let me just have a look at, because I've got a few other. When did you think that was? Sorry.
I think that must have been springtime 2011.
No, my next message is beginning of 2012, so I don't have something for that time period.
What have you got in 2012 then?
January 2012, Zoe bought you the nominations charm bracelet.
Oh yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I remember I set the New Year's resolution. I'm going to lose weight. It's the way, because if I just get my weight to the right level, like all my food problems will just disappear.
Apparently.
Thinking. Yeah.
So your message is, sorry, I'm just dabbing. Hello. That was how you started that message. Need your help with my New Year's resolution of losing weight. Zoe has bought me a nominations charm bracelet. I have just purchased 4 charms, which I'm going to give to you, and you can give them to me when I reach specific targets. Any targets not met by the end of June 2012, the remaining charms, or all of them if I fail miserably, you have to give to Zoe, as she has one too. And I need you to promise that this is what you will do. No feeling guilty or letting me off. I need to know that if I don't hit the target, then I don't get the charm. Okay? I have decided on the following targets, and then you've listed them, which...
Yeah, don't give numbers.
No, it's fine. I cut off halfway through anyway. I do remember you giving them to me. I remember where I stored them.
Wasn't it in your top drawer? In your bedroom? Yep.
Yeah.
I remember where they were stored.
I have that memory. So I remember having them, and I remember having them for a very long time, and I don't recall you ever taking one back.
I did.
Did
take
you?
them back because I did lose some weight whilst I first started training at Metanoia. It's all right.
Bear with. Finley? Yeah? Can you go into your bedroom, please?
Thank you, Finley.
Yeah, thank you.
It's all right. So I don't think I lost weight on that time frame.
Yeah.
But soon after, I did go through a restrictive period where I was still having binges, but I was doing quite a lot of restricting as well.
Right.
And I did lose some weight. And so I think it must have been about a year later. I don't think you gave them to Zoe. I think I came to you and I said, oh, look, I have. And you handed them all over to me at once because we'd kind of forgotten about it.
I think, that's what I was going to say. I didn't give them to you as in, you had one at that certain point, because I remember having them all and then not having them all and giving, so I just remember that. And I think I'm quite sure we had a discussion at some point quite late on after the time period where you kind of said, yeah, we've scrapped that sort of thing. But yes, I don't know. Let me just double check.
And I'm struck by how weight centered I was then. It was all about if I can just lose the weight, everything's going to be fine. Yeah, which is quite interesting to kind of hear that back because obviously I did know that was around, but I didn't realize I was talking about weight as much as I probably was.
Yeah, you were, and I'm just having a quick look at the next message. Unfortunately, where I've taken the screenshots. I think the next one is not till August 2016, just FYI.
Okay. That's interesting.
But yeah, I remember trying to think of anything else particular around that time. I mean, I suppose if I'm being honest, my next main memories were and this makes it sound like this was very quickly, but it wasn't. When you'd started to go to see a therapist, for the first time. I think you went to speak to someone about it, and how steadily, but over time, then that progressed to basically where we are today. But yeah, I obviously have quite, again, not accurate memories, but around the time of you discovering the links between some of your, growth hormone and that sort of side of things, and how that affects this, that, and the other. And I still probably can't remember the ins and outs of what affects what now, because you have told me, but again, I don't remember the ins and outs.
Well, I think there's always been so much confusion for me about the onset being as sudden as it was and as visceral as it was. I felt like my life challenge was trying to find where the line was between like the physiological ending and the emotional and psychological beginning. Because in theory, a lot of the physiology is beyond our control, but the mental and emotional side of things are things that we can work on. So I grappled with that for a long time, and always felt I was so unique in that struggle. But actually, something that I found working with clients now is that it's really the struggle of most binge eaters, because there's such a restrictive element to binge eating, even if it's just mental restriction around food that can trigger binge eating, that everybody who's struggling with binge eating is kind of struggling with this sort of biological or neurological side of it that is driven by the fact we have this appetite, which is part of our biology. So although mine might have been tied up with some complicated hormonal issues, it's kind of really very similar for a lot of the people that I meet and speak with about this stuff.
Yeah, I just remember there was a lot of trial and error with certain things around, or certainly with whether physical trial and error of food or medication, or just a discussion about trial and error. I think when you'd obviously start to think about, oh, well, apparently there is a link between this and this. I do remember there being lots of conversations that we'd had around the links or not links.
Well, the thing
but again, this is
sorry,
I was just going to say, but again, this was all part of the period where you were very focused on looking for answers.
Yeah, I really did think I was going to find an answer.
I remember video calls and all sorts of you being obsessed. Not
Oh, well, it was
badly, but you were obsessed with finding an answer, and you'd done some research or found something on the internet that said about this and this, or medication or whatever, something that you'd found. And yeah, no, I do remember that being the focus for a long time. My version of long could have been 6 months, I don't know, but it was quite a while. And I remember, I do remember, I couldn't tell you when it was, but when not the penny dropped for you, but when I think you'd found that place where you realised there is no answer as such. And I do remember, when was that? Ish.
Yeah, I would have thought it would have been around the time when I started training to be a therapist, which was sort of 2012, 2013, that kind of time. That was when I kind of, whether there's an answer or not, maybe accepting that I wasn't going to find it. Because when I started training to be a therapist, I was still struggling with this stuff. I was still struggling with bulimia. I wasn't going to be an eating disorders therapist because I had an eating disorder. Not ideal.
Yeah.
But yeah, it felt like a sort of a slow dawning. And because like there were so many stages to like my medical journey, like every new hormone that they were replacing, because they got replaced every few months, every time I was getting a new one, I was like, is this going to be the answer? Is this finally going to be the one that fixed me?
Yeah.
And actually, when all my hormones were replaced, I do think the eating changed a bit. I don't think it was quite as visceral as it was before, but it did not go anywhere because my relationship with food by that point was so screwed up And my relationship with my body image, like I've always noticed the mental and emotional side of it was the same as anybody else who had an eating disorder, whether there was a physiological element or not. We kind of end up in a similar boat.
Yeah.
And the same thought patterns. And I was sort of vulnerable to it because I've always been quite a black and white thinker. So that made me more vulnerable. Are you smirking at me? That made me more vulnerable to something like binge eating compared to the personality of somebody like my brother, who's this steady Eddie, who's just, he's not an all or nothing kind of person.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it was hard. I think for me, it was, it wasn't, as a friend, it certainly, it wasn't easy watching you torture yourself, trying to find an answer, trying to understand, trying to cure yourself. But because of how black and white you are, it was definitely made a lot easier for the likes of me, as a friend, because you were so you tried to be quite so black and white about it because you didn't understand there was such a grey fuzz in the middle, which did make it easier. But you put yourself through a lot in your head, which tedious link. But one of your messages, and I think, as I said, I can't be sure of when this was, but possibly 2016 is when you sent me a really long message. Do you want me to read most of it out?
Yeah, go on then.
It's okay. It's nothing. It's just quite long. I don't know what you started with because I've obviously missed that screenshot, but it was probably just our usual pleasantries. I was going to suggest FaceTime the other day, but when I got home, I was a bit low and didn't really feel like speaking to anyone. I've been a bit down. And on Tuesday night, for the first time, I seriously contemplated antidepressants. Then, coincidentally, the next day, my therapist asked me if I had ever considered them. She's never mentioned them before, so I took it as a sign. But to cut a long story short, I've booked a GP appointment on the 17th. You said to me that you hadn't mentioned this to anyone else. Probably keep it quiet, at least for now. I just felt like I wanted to tell you. You have obviously been in a similar position, and I wanted you to know that I haven't meant to be absent. Love you lots. Sarah. I didn't think to screenshot my response to that.
I remember us having a conversation about that.
I do.
Yeah, we did. We had a chat about it and everything.
I mean, obviously, my views, because at the time I would have been taking them still. My views back then are slightly different to my views now, but obviously back then, they helped me massively. Yes, they have their downsides, but they help. So I'd say I was slightly pro. I was very much of the mindset that, well, hang on a minute, if you're feeling like X and you know that Y is going to make you feel better, then to me there was no question, or there was a chance that Y would make you feel better. Surely it was worth giving it a go. And if they didn't make you feel better, then you stop taking them. I think I was quite sort of, well, surely it's as easy as that. But I know that you weren't anti as such, but I think it was very much in your mind. It was always going to be the last resort to try something like that. And I don't think, I mean, obviously you never did.
No, I didn't.
I think whatever I replied to you on that message, you sort of said back to say that you weren't shy to talk about it and that you'd put a few posts on the pituitary support pages asking people's opinions, and it was quite mixed. You did say you'd like to go on them for a short time because certain ones can help with sugar cravings, which are out of control at the mo, which is perpetuating the low mood.
Yeah.
That's the end of the messages that I'd saved anyway. But yeah, I mean, I think in the back of my mind around that time is that you know, you'd been through quite a lot physically, emotionally, you know, with the loss of your mum, everything that happened. So I think no one would have judged you for trying them out. But I understand, you know, your reasons were, there were a variety of reasons that you were thinking of trying them, and it wasn't just purely because you were feeling like depressed.
Yeah, and I wasn't sure because a lot of the hormonal stuff caused low mood. So it could be actually that the antidepressants are working on an area of the brain that's not the problem. So it was a big thing around whether it was going to be helpful or not, and all of that. And I think I ended up tweaking some of my hormones instead, and I did shift out of that mood.
Yeah.
And yeah, it seemed to be okay and not necessary in the end. But I know for some, they're an absolute game changer. People struggling with binge eating as well. So it's absolutely such a personal call when it comes to something like that.
Well, I mean, ironically, I mean, I don't, you know, looking back, I needed them when I needed them, but I now know things about myself. My vitamin B12 deficiency, that a lack of vitamin B12 can cause depression. So I think as much as I did need them when I needed them, which was in 2010, 2009, 2010, I probably could have come off them a lot sooner than I did, because I've been off them now for 18 months and not once at any point have I, sorry, twitchy because my contact lens is going funny. Not once have I felt the need to even consider or felt like that way now that my B12 is back on track. So, but again, that sort of links into what you were saying about hormones and things already in our body that might need a bit of a tweak if we can. So yeah, that's why my answer certainly would be slightly different now to what it was back then.
Yeah, and binging does mess with the serotonin levels anyway, because you're getting these spikes and drops, and it kind of interferes with the whole system. So then you end up in this, you know, chicken and egg situation. Like, how do you stop the cycle? If the binging is causing the low serotonin, which is then like creating more binging, and people get caught up in this vortex. So perhaps for some people, like, antidepressants can help to just, you know, destabilize the circle so that they can get themselves out of it and get into a place of a bit more balance. So
yeah,
I
don't know. I think whether, you know, I still, you know, I don't claim to know much about eating disorders. I've obviously got your experiences. I don't think I know anyone else with an eating disorder, or I might and just not know about it. But, and I don't know where I was going. I don't know where
That's okay. I've got a question that I just I wanted to ask. And this might be, again, a tricky one because, of course, you know, we have changed over the last decade or so anyway, because we had to grow up. But do you think my personality changed through this, or did it just kind of seem like me struggling through the eating disorder itself?
That's a good question. No. As in, do I think you have changed your personality, the way you are?
Yeah, I think I feel very different, I think, as a result of what I've gone through. It just destroyed my identity and everything I believed about myself. So I feel really different now, but maybe that's just an internal thing. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe thinking back to around now, you're a lot more confident now.
Now? I thought I was quite cocky when I was younger, no?
Well, yeah,
you
but
can say yes.
when you know someone, though, I mean, when you know someone, I think if I could put the Sarah from 8, 10, however many years ago next to the Sarah now, and you know, if I had visuals of how, you know, you were then, speaking, acting, not that you've ever been shy, I'm not saying, you know, but I think you're a lot more confident, but you're confident with yourself, about yourself. I don't know, what word am I thinking of? I think because you've went through that massive long process, and you got to a point where everything, I don't know if I'm using the right words here, where accepted everything.
Mm-hmm.
Or, you know, going back to The Cure, you've accepted, I think you're happy with yourself, as much as anyone can be. You know, everyone, there's things that people don't like about themselves, but I think in that way you are more confident. Mm-hmm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I think so. I think, you know, the words that I often use in my mind when I'm thinking about it is that it was a really humbling experience. Mm-hmm. And I think when you've been humbled, you kind of know you can survive it. You can be up on your pedestal. And because I felt like, and maybe this is looking back in sort of rose tinted spectacles, but I felt like in my early 20s and like when we first knew each other, I felt like I was invincible. Maybe that's just youth, I don't know. But now realizing I'm not invincible, realizing that I can, you know, fall apart and put myself back together again, I think brings a different kind of, the more I say is, I think it might be just an age thing. They talk about, like, you know, when you sort of hit your 30s and 40s, you do become that little bit less self-conscious, a little bit less,
yeah,
you know, everything could fall apart at any minute, because then once it does and you survive it, you're like, okay, doesn't feel good, but
yeah, I think
that being able to do that.
Yeah, I agree with you in that respect, in that age, and as you grow older, our opinions and views, our views and the way we feel does change. And yes, we were both confident, cocky, outgoing, all of the above, when we were in our early 20s. And I think we are of an age now where we do accept things a lot more. We've lived. We're not whippersnappers anymore. We've been through all of that. So yeah, you're right. I think a part of it is just our age.
What happened?
But I don't think you've changed. I really don't think you have. Other than, as anyone would do between when they're 20 something and reaching 40. Other than, I think you are more, what is the word? It's going to bother me.
If you think about it afterwards, send me a message and I'll just pop it on the screen.
You're more accepting and kind of, you know, it's probably come at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I'll wake up.
Let me know. I probably won't put this out for a few days.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Yeah.
Not like this, but a bit more kind of like, yeah, just go with the flow. And I know that is not you, but it.
Laid back, not.
But you're not.
No, I'm not. I'm not either.
It is a bit more. It is like this relief. No, kind of like what I'm trying to say is there was like you, and then you now is a bit more of a, yeah, well that's the way it was. And this is the way it is, and I'm over it. Not over it, but I'm over it. I know what it is. I know what it is.
And I'm gonna use it to try and make something good out of it. I mean, if it hadn't got, I wouldn't be doing this.
And it's all good.
I wouldn't have the coolest job in the world. I'd be still in the effing police. I'd be policing bloody COVID right now if it wasn't for the teething problem. Yeah. And have you got another word? Accepting and... Because I'll add it on. I'll just flash it.
What word am I trying to think of when someone becomes just more...
Secure? Grounded?
Yeah, maybe a bit more secure and grounded.
Oh, well, I really appreciated you coming on and talking about this stuff today. It's been really weird for me, actually, especially hearing those messages again. To hear my voice kind of feels like hearing the ghosts of the past in a way. It's just a bit strange.
But oddly enough, you certainly describe things and word things exactly the same back then as you do now.
I like my words. I've always been a bit of a linguist. But, yeah.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure. Anytime.
In fact, we should just start Zooming and recording and putting on YouTube all our conversations about FaceTime when we're talking about our aches and pains and, and everything else. But no, thank you very much, Nicki. It's been really great to have you. Love you loads.
Love you.
Bye.
Bye.